Okay, so there's many concepts, and what order do we formulate or kind of present the concepts? Well, it's not randomized, but we really just kind of go in order of this class. So sometimes we just kind of lump a few categories in a video, but this is another category. It's one of the themes of this video. Another kind of category that we have in experiment and statistics, and that is so we have there's basically two. We have an experiment in any little thing that's subdivided into categories. I always welcome us to Google image. you know the simplest things, as soon as we have the idea, we can just Google image it and it'll give us a little chart, which maybe we do in this video, maybe not. But we have an experiment or we have an observational study, and those are basically the only two. In advanced stats, you can have all sorts of stuff like blocked experiments and all sorts of crazy stuff that's hard to category. But observational study, I'm going to end up blocking the question there. Okay, so in the end, no matter how easy we make it, and I've been doing it for years and I get stumped a little bit, here and there. Every class, there's going to be a few tricky questions, yeah. But we know the definition, or sometimes there's just a way to tell these apart. But this is very easy. It's supposed to be easy anyways. So with an experiment, this is always true. Just give a basic definition. If you ever have an experiment, there is a treatment. There is a treatment administered. So there is a treatment. If I'm reading a question, is this an experiment or is this an observational study? I'm looking for a treatment. Yeah, this is true. I mean, they could give questions that are hard to define that are ambiguous. We don't really know. But if we know for a fact there's a treatment, it is an experiment. Yeah. If there's no treatment, then it's automatically an observational study. So treatment is experiment. A treatment is administered. We know a treatment, a drug or a pill, but sometimes the treatment is more ambiguous or, kind of more creative. So experiment does go hand in hand. You know how I exaggerate. Yeah, experiment does go hand in hand with a treatment. That's basically it. And we said things about blocks. This will kind of go on further. We just kind of go, see what we do here. Um, we This is very common. We will have it in this class as we have it in all. This is basically automatically treatment. We don't really have this kind of a model in observational. We only have it in treatment. Yeah. But two groups, no more than two, not three or anything, not one, not three. But we have the control group and we have the treatment group. And the random assignment and all that, that's a little bit more complicated depending on how in-depth the question is. But a control group are a group of people who are not given a treatment, often given a placebo. It gets into other things: single blind, double blind. Single blind is if the patient doesn't know whether or not they're given a placebo. Double blind is that both the patient and the doctor conducting the study, basically everybody involved, doesn't know who's given a treatment and who's given a placebo. But you have a control group who's not given a treatment. And of course, you have a treatment group who is given the treatment. And then, of course, in a experiment, you're comparing the results of both of these here. Yeah. So that's very common for the experiment. You're always going to have a control group and you're going to have a treatment group who's given an observational studies. Of course, observational, you don't introduce any kind of treatment. Yeah. So they have kind of a question here. We've already answered it right there. But researchers conduct a study to determine whether magnets are effective in treating back pain. Pain was measured using the visual analog scale, and the results given below are among the results obtained in the study. Higher scores respond to greater pain levels in this study. Yeah, is this study an experiment or observational study? Reduction of pain treatment. Sham treatment, I assume, is a placebo. But they tell us right here that number one, they imply that number one is a treatment group. And I don't think I'm misinterpreting, but two is a control or some sort of a placebo group. They said right there, in accordance with my definition, that if there's two groups, a treatment group and a control group, and obviously a treatment, the magnet, see, not a pill or a drug, but somebody who's given some sort of a, something happened to them That was the treatment. The magnet, that's my little picture of a magnet right there. Anyways, the study is an experiment because subjects were given treatments. So polarity, very obvious. Okay, so, now we kind of go into a very different thing here. These are going to be sampling techniques. These are our basic, we don't call them elementary sampling techniques. I don't just want to, make stuff up, but in an intermediate stats class, it can be more complicated. But these are kind of the introductory, sampling techniques that we do here. Um, I want to say something. Let's make sure I don't mess it up. We can always just Google a simple random sample. Yeah, feel free to Google simple, oftentimes Google is trustworthy, not always, but oftentimes. Simple random sample. I don't want to mess this up. So this is true. This is not the definition. It's like, why would you tell me something that's not the definition? But if we're kind of a, logically minded, Captain Spock, if we kind of have a logical mind, you have a big population or whatever it is, or you can have a small population. It doesn't matter. So this is not the definition, not definition of simple random sample, which is how I choose to do my videos. I once thought this was the definition. This is why we say this. That's my little picture of a population. Okay. Let's just say that you have 3,243 people in this. If every single individual, of course, we have to create a technique that's harder. Actually doing it is harder. But if each individual in the population, has equal probability of being chosen, equal probability of being chosen, then it is a simple random sample. Okay, so what I just said is not the definition of a simple random sample. It seems like it would be, but it's not. The definition of a simple random sample is, easy, but it's very hard to verbalize and say, and it's very easy to kind of get that wrong. So what is the definition of a simple random sample? So we need size n. We always need size n. You have to have a fixed size n. So we're going to choose a sample of n equals 23. We're going to choose a sample of n equals 100. We're going to choose a sample of n equals 30. We're going to choose a sample of n equals 200. That's all fine. We can choose our sample size n. N is the sample size that we're picking out of the population. Yeah, we can choose all of that, but we have to have one sample. So for this, the definition of simple random sample, we have to have a sample, say n equals 100. Okay, so this is the definition of a simple random sample. You have a sample size, whatever it may be, remember capital N, 3,444. You have a population size. So there are a finite number of possible, it's very easy, these concepts, but it's hard to verbalize. You can think of it, there are a finite number of possible samples of size N. Yeah, there are a finite number of possible samples of size N. So if you take a random sample of 100 out of 3,444, I'm still struggling to say the definition. It's best that I just say the definition. So all possible samples of size 100, all possible samples of size 100 have to be equally probable. That's the actual definition of a simple random sample. If you have sample size, whatever it is, 30, 100, you can have any sample size. You have all possible samples that can be taken out of the population, and if each one of those samples is equally probable, then it's considered a simple random sample. So actually not that easy to kind of say the thing anyways. That was my little detour that goes outside of the class, but feel free to Google simple random sample. It's not actually that easy to define. Yeah, not every member of the population, no. Every member of the population has equal probability of being picked. That's not a simple random sample. You have sample size n, and each possible complete sample has equal probability of being picked. I can't even say it. It's like a tongue twister. Or if I remember what it is, I can't talk. And if I can talk, I forget what the definition is. So anyways, who cares? So these are our kind of sampling. We always, they do define it. We prefer not convenient sampling. Convenience is, none of us actually do this in practice. You have to be a real statistician or what do they call them? Or a can't remember the word right now. We do this in car accidents and insurance and all that. And they have people who really do this stuff in practice and actuarial. We have all that stuff. Yeah. But if we do any real study, we don't prefer a convenience sample. A convenience sample is exactly that. You know, maybe we stand in front of a store and we try our best. If I were you, if you have a clipboard, I'm walking right by you anyways if you have a clipboard. But we're standing outside of a store and we're trying to interview everybody who's walking in and out of this thing. You know, anytime it's not a random sample, it's convenience. It's exactly that, convenience. Calling people up on the phone is often, you know, convenience, or, you know, surveys are often convenience and all that, but convenience we don't want. The actual definition of convenience sampling is just, you know, interviewing or collecting data in any way that's convenient. Yeah. Okay, so systematic sampling is good. It's not like a conveyor belt, but with this is the definition of systematic, and I kind of think of a conveyor belt in a factory, kind of a silly way to look at it, but that's what I think about it. And we have a number of products. We sell a certain product, each one exactly the same or something. Yeah. So they do it in terms of math. So systematic, yeah, systematic sampling is pick every kth. You know, usually they say kth with a th. It's integer kth. Pick every third item off the conveyor belt. Pick every fifth. You know, usually it's not going to be every third because you pick everything, but pick every seventh is something more normal. Yeah. But if you pick every fourth, you know, or something like that, maybe I just circled every third. I'm not sure. But if you have a conveyor belt going by and you pick every 10th item, yeah, something like that is systematic sampling. So if you pick every kth or nth, doesn't matter what letter you use, kth or nth item off of a list, you know, in real life, we don't have a conveyor belt. In real life, we have like we wouldn't even necessarily say the list of names is randomized, but we have a bunch of phone numbers that we're going to call. Maybe helps make our survey a little bit more randomized. But if you have a very, very long list of numbers, yeah, if you pick every fifth one or something, you know, pick every fifth one from the list, that's a systematic random sampling. Okay, so this is very simple. Do not mix up cluster or stratified. It's very easy to mix up cluster or stratified. Now, stratified is grouped by characteristic. We have to be careful. I really want to say it. I don't want to kind of mix this up, but I can talk a little bit backwards sometimes. So stratified is, I just want to say it, it's kind of, you know, sometimes I contradict. I say this is important, and then I say it's not important. It is true that stratified sampling is grouped, yeah, grouped by characteristic. Yeah, so everybody in this group literally has brown eyes. Everybody in this group literally has green eyes. Everybody in this group literally has blue eyes. Yeah. It is true that stratified random sampling, this is true. It's basically always true. Sometimes the characteristics are very distinct. Sometimes they're a little bit more vague. Stratified random sampling is always grouped by characteristic. Maybe we have a chart. It doesn't matter, you know, what the chart is, but we have 0 to 18 years of age. We have like 18 to 21. We have you know, 21 to 30. Yeah, and we have people grouped in age brackets. Well, that is grouped by characteristics. It is. Everybody in this group is 0 to 18, 18 to 21. Yeah, so that is grouped characteristics. So I'm just saying it is true that stratified random sampling, stratified, specifically stratified, the groups are called strata. I just say these things 10 times in a row. Yeah, stratified sampling is grouped by characteristic. Now, but, okay, I don't want to say that's not important, it is. But even though that's true, I'm not always looking for that. So there are there's something kind of more important going on with clustered and stratified. Let's kind of explore that. Go ahead and Google image this. You know, this is cluster, this is stratified, and they are two different sampling methods. Okay, so stratified, you have an entire population. Yeah, stratified, you have an entire population that's split into groups, supposedly, like I just said, by characteristic. So stratified are separated into groups. Cluster sampling is also split into groups, you know, clusters. So this is the thing, this is always true. The cluster will split the population into groups, and cluster sampling will pick at random entire groups. Yeah, so cluster sampling will pick at random entire groups. Yeah. Okay, so a cluster will split into groups, and then we will pick entire groups. That's what we will do. Yeah. Now, this is always true. Stratified will split into groups, and then we will randomly sample from each group. So with stratified, supposedly by characteristic, they're grouped anyways. Yeah. So that's the main characteristic that we want to know. Cluster will separate into clusters or groups, and then they will randomly select entire groups. All the other ones will be kept out. Stratified will separate it into groups called strata, usually by characteristic, actually always. But those characteristics may or may not be important or easy or hard to define. But the key thing is that we randomly sample from each group. The fact that we randomly sample some certain number from each group, that's what truly separates it from cluster. So that's what we want to see between cluster and stratified. Cluster will separate into groups, randomly choose entire groups. Stratified will group it and randomly select individuals from each group, or strata is what we call that. Yeah. So this is kind of one. This is my own example. Yeah, stratified. What if we have, trying to do a nice kind of picture, it doesn't have to be that great. This is a hotel room. Yeah, what if we have different floors from a hotel room? Uh, Always trying to think of a creative example on the fly. That's hard. But this is a giant hotel room. And what we do is we pick floors. This is the 50th, the 49th, the 48th, the 47th. Yeah. So if we separate the entire, we need some hotel rooms. So we first take the entire building, separate it into floors, and then we randomly select 3 rooms from each floor. Yeah. Well, this isn't the kind of one where we would do cluster anyways. If you do cluster, you would have taken an entire floor. But the fact that you take 3 from each automatically means strata. Now they are separated by characteristic because every floor on this one is on the 50th, every floor on this one is on the 49th. But we see how that whole, separated into strata or groups by a characteristic can be rather ambiguous. But if you have one of those, it is automatically stratified. If you take a hotel room and you separate it by floors, and then you randomly select a certain number of rooms from each floor, the fact that we're sampling from each group means it's automatically stratified. Yeah. So those are kind of fun. Yeah. So that's cluster. And then we have our favorite, we have a random sampling, which supposedly is, take a random sample in some way. They always say the same thing, even though it'd be hard to do. But whenever they do random sampling, they always talk about, doing a computer program. That way we don't have to think. So supposedly a computer program will randomly select from a list and blah, blah, blah. I want to say that each member on the list has equal probability. A simple random sample is not defined that way. A simple random sample, we have to pick our sample size 30 or sample size 22. Once we have that, each possible sample out of the population has equal probability of being picked. That's the simple random sample. Okay. Yeah, in this video series, I'm going to lose my voice here. So identify which one there. Yeah. A researcher selects every 985th. That's every K. Yep. I always say the context of the problem is not important, a very bad habit in word problems and statistics, but I don't always even read the thing. It's just obvious. So that's systematic right there. So I always just take each question. I take the time with each question, to organize the lecture into a class. I just start talking about the thing. Okay, so here that we already know the answer is stratified. I've been through all this. To determine her body temperature, Charlotte divides up her day into 3 parts. So it is by category: morning, afternoon, evening. Yeah, then she measures her body temperature at 4 randomly selected times. Wait, I'm a little bit scared here. To determine her body temperature, Charlotte divides her day into 3 parts. Yeah, morning, afternoon, and evening day into 3 parts. She then measures her body temperature at 4 randomly selected times during each part of the day. Oh, okay, so we have a morning, afternoon, and evening. And then within this, we do 4 random. Within the afternoon, we do 4 random. Yeah, kind of tripped me up there for a second. Then in the evening we do full random. But it is separated, of course, always by category, but more important, we pick 4 selections from each category. Yeah, if you select an entire category, then it's cluster, but this one is stratified. That's joy. Yeah. So here we have individuals convicted of a felony are more likely to not answer the second question honestly. These are quite annoying here. Determine whether the study is an experiment or observational study, and then identify a major problem with the study. So we can kind of look at this one here if we want. Remember, if there's no treatment, it's automatically observational, but it's just kind of for time. I mean, this is a very, very good class I offer, but it's going to take dozens and dozens and dozens of videos to kind of get to the point of all this. So we can always read and interpret each question. I don't just mean to fly by it, but there's always kind of an interpretation they want us to do, and I would go on a 5-minute rant that only has to do with this problem. So we just care about mostly that one thing. A treatment is with an experiment always has a treatment. Observational does not have a treatment, but we can read this one if we want. Okay, so this is a concept that we haven't done yet. Let's take a look at this. Just pause here for a minute. Okay, so I just kind of Googled a few things. They don't always do this in elementary stats. It's not like a rule. We have this definitely in elementary stats or all stats, intermediate, things like that. But to understand these designs are actually, I think, fairly complicated. Um, First of all, I kind of have this like little chart that, where did I put it over here? We're looking at A and B from this little chart on the right. That does kind of help us a little bit. But so a completely randomized design, CRD, completely randomized design is one where treatments are assigned completely at random so that each experimental unit has the same chance of receiving any one treatment. And of course, we're not talking about something that's the focus of this course. Usually there's two, a treatment and a control. In other words, a treatment and a placebo. But you could have something like 3 treatments and a placebo, so 4 treatments. The placebo is considered, getting a pill or something like that. But there's one big group, and each person is kind of basically, it's going to be, I know that we can kind of basically see this, but even if I kind of draw this little picture, I don't know if it does it that much justice or describes it well. Yeah, but that's kind of one basic thing. So if we want to kind of go back to the video, if we just want to go over that definition, it's perfectly okay. So then a randomized block design was that second picture, is a restricted randomized design. Sorry, sometimes it's kind of like, that was not on purpose. Just interrupts my video here. Completely randomized design. Yeah, so a randomized block design is a restricted randomized design in which experimental units are first organized into homogeneous blocks, and then the treatments are assigned at random to these units within these blocks. Um, there's things in there that we're not talking about. I think it goes, beyond the class. Like, are they blocked by characteristics? They say homogeneous blocks. I just don't want to define everything in there. It's hard. It is at least more like this second picture right here. But I do admit that we're not going that deep in there. The question said for C, matched pair. This is not matched pair. That's a different thing, where they're actually blocked by treatments, is what that one is right there. But if we kind of get a basic visual, I don't think it defines it perfectly, but a basic visual for a completely randomized is that. Randomized block is something more like that. So we just have to see how loosely or how in-depth we have to define these things in this class. It's usually more for an advanced experimental class, or, we do like actual research or study. So we don't always define these that well in elementary statistics. Maybe if we want, I can kind of do a special video more in depth on this. But so then The matched pair, once again, is also kind of ambiguous. Okay, so a matched pair design is an experimental design where the participants are matched in pairs based on shared characteristics before they are assigned to groups. And then it goes on, one participant from the pair is randomly assigned to a treatment group, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so we're now, the more that I look at this, the more that I think we're going to do a special video on this. So if we read this one, they're going to say that it's match pairs. So completely randomized. If we go through this question, it's, we have one big group and the treatment or treatments is randomized throughout the people. It's best to say that each person has equal probability of getting whichever one. So they're not really asking us a question here. I think we can kind of come to the end of this. It's still kind of an introduction. But if we have a frequency, if you add all the frequencies, that sample size n, we sometimes say that n equals the sum. That's a sum symbol of all frequencies in a frequency distribution. So if we ever want a closer look in depth, we can pause the video and read it. It's just if there's a few points we're trying to make, if there's a few problems that aren't really that important, we're just going to skip them. Yeah. A frequency. Yeah, we have relative frequency. A frequency is always going to be integers. Yeah, frequency is always a tally, like 6, although they don't do it in a tally, they would have a number 6. But a frequency is always a number. And then if you take the frequency and divide it by n, if you have a decimal, fraction, these are all basically the same thing. A decimal, fraction, or percent. If you have a decimal, fraction, or percent, it's what's called a relative frequency. That just means you have 6 divided by the total, 7 divided by the total. Yeah. We can do this problem really quick. I was going to present this in a different video. But those are the frequencies right there. The sample size n that's in our study is just add all of that, literally 4 plus 12 plus all the way to 2. What is sample size n if we do that there? I get 25, 29, I think 35, 37, I think is what I get. So if you add up that column, we get n equals 37. So literally, what are the relative frequencies? It's going to be 4 divided by 37. It's going to be 12 divided by 37. It's going to be 13 divided by 37. And fraction, decimal, or percent, all three of them are acceptable for relative frequency, but of course we want a percent, we have to multiply it by 100. Usually a fraction or decimal is preferred. Yeah, so 10.81, which we have over there, 0.1081. So relative frequency just divides all the frequencies by sample size n. And then they have a little problem to see if we're able to read all this. So they're going to have a special section pretty quick here on, charts. That's kind of coming up next. But we're done with this homework, and I will see you in the next video.